Welcome, everyone. I am going to call to order the Town of Andover Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, May 13th. And our agenda calls this a special meeting, but it is not a special meeting. It is a regularly scheduled monthly meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 2, public speak, and we'll start with Jeff Ballard.
I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for supporting the community garden. We seem to be making a lot of progress. I am here tonight to request the original fence proposal, which was 10 feet from the front of the beds. I had gotten at the last meeting, it was okay to put the fence 5 feet away from the front of the beds. I'm asking for an additional 5 feet in front of the beds to give us access for vehicles from the rear, for composting, for bringing in soil, for a small truck to be able to access the community garden. I've already, at the time that I requested the 5 feet, it was not staked out where the leaching field was. That was previous to the senior center getting their leaching field established, where they had staked it out. And speaking with Thad King the day that that was approved for the town, I was clear with him about what I could and couldn't do. I'm staying 5 feet away from the leaching field with any post holes. And I've built and constructed a model for how I'm going to get around the corner of the leaching field that is affected, and on top of the ground.
Okay. All right. I do believe we have that on the agenda, so we'll deal with that. Okay, we will move on to Michael and Kathy Palazzi. Before we get going, Mike, thank you very much for all the, I know we gave your wife some props at our town meeting, but we also need to give you some props for all the time and hard work you've put in. You've been involved in the CART program for as long as I've been involved, and I know it's probably another 10 or 15 years. So thank you very much for everything you've done.
Well, it's not a problem. I enjoy doing it.
All right. You guys got anything else you want to give to us tonight?
I have nothing. Thank
Nothing,
you.
no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Linda Fish.
All set.
All right. Diane Grenier.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I always have problems with that. No, I'm doing fine. No complaints. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Bill Penn.
Good evening. I'm here just for a couple issues. One is to reiterate my support for eventually getting a trail in on the Joshua Trust Skinner Hill Preserve property. The second item I'd like to support is the proposal for the e-bike program that Erica's put together. There are literally hundreds of programs similar to this around the country. So, I think it's really showing some initiative for a small town like Andover to go forward and get something like this in place. And hopefully over the years we can even expand on it. But I think this ties in nicely with our new community center and having the program administered and all that. So thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Christy McHugh.
Hi, sorry, trying to allow video. There we go. Hi, I'm just listening in tonight because I knew that one of the agenda items would be that trail in the preserve. That's located immediately behind my house, so I naturally have some concerns. I know there's some other folks on the phone who are in the same situation as we are, and want to just raise the concern that that's not something that we would particularly want here in our neighborhood.
Okay, all right, thank you. James Cole,
Thanks. I am here for two reasons. One is to voice my support for the trail that is proposed to occur on the Joshua Trust property in the Skinner Hill Preserve. And secondly, to voice my support for the e-bike program that Eric Anderson is proposing. And I'll leave it at that.
all right, thank you very much. Leanne Hutchinson,
Yes, just listening for now. Thank you.
all right. Andre Rurak, I apologize if I mispronounced that.
Hello, sorry, having a bad connection here, my work right now. I'm here to express my concern about the trail. I have a little kid that work in my backyard every day. I have some safety concerns that kind of people the trail is gonna attract in our backyards, since my backyard is gonna be very close to the trail. And also some privacy concerns as well. So I'm against the trail.
Okay. Ed asked, but I'm assuming that's Ed Cerisley.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, hello. Yeah, okay. I had to update my Zoom software here. Supporting the e-bike proposal. I think if our country, our state, our town would be much better off if we get out of our internal combustion engines and take a bicycle for a mile to town hall or wherever we're going in town. Many of us have worked on the Bike Walk Andover committee that hopefully will get started back up again. And having e-bikes available to especially seniors like myself will get people healthier, as Eric has explained. And also, it just not only the health benefit, but just the town as a whole to be more environmentally friendly and green. I think it's a great idea. Other towns are doing it, cities have been doing it. It's time for Andover to catch up with being able to bike and walk our town. The hills in town allow seniors or require seniors to have an e-bike, and you just use a little bit of it. You don't need to speed like a motorcycle. I've been doing it for years. Go to meetings on them. It's the best way to do it. So I support the e-bike proposal for town of Andover. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And then there is a cell phone that is connected, ends in 5475. I do not know who that is.
That's Leanne.
That's Leanne?
Hi, yes,
Okay.
this is Leanne. Thanks again.
Okay, so she's connected twice. Did I miss anyone for public speak? Okay. I'm going to go to 2A, which is going to be additions and deletions because this is not a special meeting. So do we have any additions or deletions from any of the board members? I will sit there and make an addition. We need to sit there and talk about the establishment of a date for the charter revision committee. Well, we need to add the charter revision committee to the agenda for the purposes of establishing the initial public hearing.
Second that.
All right, anything else? Or do we just, well, all those in favor? Aye.
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 All right, do we have anything else that we need to add or delete from the agenda? Eric, is there anything that we need to add or delete from the agenda?
Not that I know of, Jeff.
Okay. And actually, the item that we did, let's put that one. Let's put that as 9E, and we'll also expand that to discussions of the Charter Revision Committee and issues that the board would like the committee to address. So 9E. charter revision. Okay. All right, let's move on with item 3, board and commission presentations. The library board of directors. Is anyone going? Diane, was that put on, Eric, for a reason? Were they requesting to be?
That is me.
Oh,
That was carried over from a last meeting where you wanted pictures of the Daniel Burnett clock. And I had copies forwarded of the packet concerning the history and appraisal of Daniel Burnett clock. And seeking permission for another place to put it other than the wall to the right of the library exit in the first floor.
just as a side thing, Jeff, when do you need a decision on that? So it's being renovated right now, or it's being stored? I mean, when does the decision on this need to be made? Because I mean, I personally don't feel as if we should sit there and make a decision on the new community center until we're in the community center and understand, at least a little bit of understanding of how that building flows. So when do you need a flat out yes or no on that?
It's it's being tabled. The man that is working on Mr. Crum, who's rebuilding and restoring the works of the clock with the proper weight, the material for the brass pulley. It's on hold, and we're requesting a space in the old community room, not in the senior center. Or any alternative to that entrance space. He's requesting an alternative for a better traffic pattern.
Okay.
No, this has been in the works since last fall, and I expect it to be in the works for a much longer time.
All right, we'll try not to have that happen. Okay, so we'll move on to item 3B, the garden club budget request. So, I mean, that's done. We gave you.
Yeah, that's done. I'm
so
happy.
let's talk about the fencing here. I'm assuming that's in the, so you're asking to expand the distance between the beds and the fence, and I'm assuming you're going to encroach additionally on not only the septic, the leach field, but also on the new community center. No?
No, if you go back to whenever the first proposal for the fence was, probably last fall, before the first of the year, that was the original proposal, but I could not knowing where the leaching fields were, because it was never marked out. It was also part of my request, along with that package for the budget. And so I moved it back 5 feet to try and stay away from leaching fields, not knowing where they were. Thad King from the Eastern Highlands Health District has said that what I propose is not a problem. Yes, it brings it 5 feet closer to the senior center. It basically follows the anchor fence that's there now. I had marked it out, and Eric came to me and said, you got permission for 5 feet, and now you've got to go back and get permission for the extra 5 feet to make it the original 10.
Okay. Eric, I have to just ask, because you're down there and you're dealing with, and Scott, please chime in. Are these marked out right now? Like the fence lines and where we're currently at? Is it all staked in the ground so you guys see it?
Correct.
There are markings there, yes,
Okay.
or they're proposing to put it.
Okay. And so from your standpoint, the two of you, what are the negatives of this additional request?
Well, from my perspective, two things. I want to actually minimize the number of people driving back there, period. I'm not sure I want people driving all the way back to the back end of the community gardens. I think we set it up so they could drive up to the fence of the community garden. But I think trying to set that place up so you can drive all the way into the back, to me, that's problematic, frankly. Because even if you make it 10 feet, now a car is a little over 8. So, do you really want cars backing in there? Number one. And number two, there's a pretty limited space behind that building. And if you think about all the recreation activities that are likely to be back there, as soon as you put a fence up, you're blocking everything else. So it's a question of allocating space back there and how much gets allocated to community garden versus how much gets allocated to the rest of the community center. Those are my two takes on that.
Okay, Scott?
Right now we have it set up so that he can back a truck up to the first bed. Eric has some valid concerns. It depends on what everybody else thinks. I'm only one voice.
That's okay. That's why we're asking you. You're the most knowledgeable on the topic.
I think that they're. I think that they have access to the beds now.
Okay, and we approved 5 feet, correct?
Yep.
Last meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion to expand this? Okay, Jeff, without hearing a motion to expand it, I would sit there and recommend to you to sit there and take the 5 feet and sit there and put the fence around it appropriately and get started, because the more we encroach on the community center, which is a significant new asset for the town, if I would just tell you, you've gotten approval for the last meeting for 5 feet. That's where we're going to stay at right now. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. For appointments, for a consideration of appointing 3 advisory boards for the senior and the community center. Eric had put these in our package. He had requested 3 different groups to advise the new employee, the Rec Commission, a 5-person senior advisory board, and the Community Center Advisory Committee.
Now, I am not suggesting that you do that at this meeting.
No.
I gave you a couple people that might be appropriate for those commissions that I thought would probably want to serve on it. I'm just giving you the outline so that when we have a senior/community center director in place, the advisory committees are all ready to go and they can just plug in and work with that person.
Well, the question is, do we want one advisory committee or we want 3 separate ones? And your recommendation is 3 separate ones to advise on 3 separate topics to the individual?
That's my guess.
What would be the reason for 3 separate advisory boards?
Because we're essentially giving this person 3 hats: senior center director, community center director, rec center director.
If we keep it 3 separate entities, is this how I'm trying to understand? Is this person going to meet with them, or are they going to?
Yeah, I would presume they'd meet with them, once or twice a month with each board. Sure.
I don't have a problem how Eric laid it out. I worry about who's in control of when they tell this individual what to do. Their advisory boards, it doesn't get done. They're going to end up coming back to the Board of Selectmen or to Eric and sit there and complain, especially from a negative perspective. So, but to be really honest, Eric's logic is sound, because he's really breaking it down to the Recreation Committee, the Rec Commission would control sports and different community activities. The senior group would advise for the young and heart and all of the senior activities, the senior luncheon, and have input in there. The third one, I know you said a community advisory committee, but just express to me what your thought is related to that group. That's the only group, and what would their focus be for the new individual?
So the question becomes, is that the seniors will advocate for their own programming, and rightfully so. And the rec commission will advocate for recreational programs. But there's a lot of people that A, aren't going to be part of the rec programs, and B, are not seniors. And we're building this as a senior and a community center. So there should be some kind of group that works on stuff related to a community center and understands what a community center should be doing as functions, as opposed to a senior center or specifically recreation. So, I mean, those are my recommendations. You can parse that any way you like.
If the recreation committee, let's just say this, if the recreation committee has an issue with how the director is doing the recreation, who's the boss? Who's the chief? You, recreation director, or the committee?
Who do you want to be the boss?
In essence, we're the board of directors, and Eric is the CEO who has to deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so just those two, let's say, because it's going to come up.
Oh, it's going to
told you to do this, and you're not doing this.
That happens every day, though. That happens every day with a lot of different things.
Who's the chief? Those two.
I think if we wrote this up, we would write this up as that these groups would advise the new director in these areas, and it would only be an advisory capacity. What they'll do as residents is, if they don't see their needs being taken care of, they're going to complain. And the first person they're going to go to is not the director. They're going to go to Eric, and then, or they're going to go to you, Scott. So it's just the same pattern that we deal with all the time. The question is, they're advisory groups, not direct control groups. And what they're advising on is, in my head, specific things that mean something to the people that are participating in those committees.
And at one point, is the director going to need any more advice from these three boards?
I'm sure this board's going to give that individual advice as well.
Well, as long as I'm thinking that right now it's there to help this new director get on board.
Yeah.
At some point.
It also gives them, gives the director a group of hopefully committed individuals that are willing to lend a hand, because the new director is going to need assistance from various groups, including us. So I don't really have a problem with it. I think what we would want to do is we would want to ask for volunteers potentially for those committees, and sit there and see how it goes. It's just a question of, are we all willing to support that? Anybody? Nobody?
Yeah, I kind of had the same question that Scott did, just how long we thought that they would be advising this person. So that was
pretty valid point, you know.
Forever. I mean, I don't think the seniors are going to want to give up say in what they do. And instead of having 40 seniors all go to a director and give them issues, you have one group of seniors that's empowered to work with that person to come up with what programming the seniors think are appropriate. I don't necessarily want a director to tell the seniors what programming they're going to get. I want a senior center director to work with them to get the programs they want, plus some stuff I want. You know,
I think
you being a senior,
we're gonna probably get questions. It's good to have this conversation, because I'm just thinking, if I'm a senior transportation driver, I want to know like what is my role or what things would I be talking to this person about? I think we don't have to talk about this tonight, but just continue to say this is what we think this person would give value to the new director. I think that's what I'm kind of struggling with is trying to understand because I'm not in the mix of this every day. I mean maybe these people already have an idea in mind of what they'll share with the director, but that's just my thoughts right now. But I think it's great because you're giving the director insight for people that are already doing it, and then the seniors can input their thoughts into some of these people, like you said, so it's not multiple people going to the director. So I like the idea.
Yeah, and my goal in that was to provide a wide swath essentially of senior issues and senior programs. Yeah, I put Kathy Palazzi on it because she's been sitting in that role essentially for a long time. So if anybody can advise somebody on what the town has done up to this point, it's her. So if she's willing to serve, she would be an obvious one. The Young at Heart is probably the second biggest program that we run. And so I would put Sue Schmidt because Sue Schmidt runs that program currently.
Well, okay, let's back up. This is not for us to sit there and say who we would want on these committees. They all have to submit, a notice that they're interested in. The question for the board is, are we willing to establish these 3 new committees to assist the director of the community center? And if we are, we just need to make a motion to do it. Okay, if no one else is gonna, I'll make a motion that we establish 3 committees to assist and advise the new community center director. Those 3 committees would be a rec committee, a senior advisory board, and a community advisory committee.
I will second that.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, 5-0. And so, Eric, what I would request is that you publish these with Carol and ask for potential members. And obviously, there's some groups that you feel strongly about, and I please ask you to reach out to those individuals and sit there and see if they'd put their names in. All right.
Sure.
Anybody else have any other issues related to that?
I just have one quick question. Since the rec commission already exists and it's a fully formed board, do you want to ask again, or what is it that you want to do related to the rec commission?
Well, personally, you can leave that group as the advisory group for that. That's fine because they're already in. I mean, unless anybody has an issue. I mean, you or myself or any resident can go to a rec commission meeting and sit there and tell them things that they would like to be considered for the new community center. So, and then that group and the chairperson can go to the community center director and tell them what's up. But so I have no problem with that. I don't think you need to apply for a new group there, but the other 2 you do.
Sure.
Okay. Any other issues on that? No. Okay. 4B, CART, Don Lundberg.
So in your packet, you have both a resignation from Mike Palazzi, and then Don Lundberg has graciously agreed to take over the CART program. So my suggestion would be that you officially appoint Don Lundberg as the Andover representative for the CART, or the Andover person running the CART program.
Somebody want to make that motion?
I make the motion to accept Don Lundberg as the new CART volunteer.
Seconded.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, 5-0. Thank you very much. Okay, item 5, resignations. There was a resignation in the packet from Mike Palazzi resigning from the CART program, which we just discussed. Again, I'd like to just thank Mike for all his time and everything that he's done for the community related to this program and everything else. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, item 6, town administrator report.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, let me make that larger. Okay, I'm just gonna go over the things that have changed or modified since I put together the packet. Number one, July 4th, we scheduled an employee meeting in the town hall just to go over the benefit information changes, and presumably we'll have a budget. So
June 4th.
sorry, you're right, June 4th. After that, we're gonna have a cookout. We scheduled it then because the following day, the Young at Heart program is having their cookout. And since we gotta get the grill out anyway, we might as well grill out for both. So Board of Selectmen are certainly invited to both the meeting and the cookout afterward. If any of you could make it, that would be great. I did submit for a congressional appropriation through Senators Murphy and Blumenthal's office. It would be for approximately $410,000, which would complete the community center and also pay for the installation of the backup generator that would cover the fire department, the town hall, and the community center. So we've done a lot of the background electrical and conduit work to make that happen, because some of that had to go in now while the community center was being built. But it's a fairly large, expensive project putting the generator in, so I'm hoping to fund it congressionally. That'll allow us to stretch the money that we have put aside for the community center and get both the community center completed as well as the backup generator for the complex. I also submitted a grant through the State Department of Aging. They had some ARPA funds that they allotted to senior centers, and proposed to use that money to buy a lot of the equipment for the kitchen. That way, even before we have time to do permanent installs, at least we'll have functional refrigerators, freezers, you know, and an ice maker and microwave, that kind of stuff. However, shortly after I submitted the grant, I got a note from the Department of Aging saying the governor is considering canceling that program and reusing the money elsewhere. So it's unclear whether they're going through with that. Frankly, the reason why I held off submitting it towards near the end of the program cycle was because I wanted the community center as far along as we could get before we submitted it, so we knew better what we got. That may have been a mistake. Maybe I should have submitted the thing, 6 months ago, but I was well before the end of the program deadline, so I wasn't really worried about it at the time. HVAC work is ongoing at the town hall. They should be done by June 1. The electrical work is largely completed, and the fire department HVAC work is going to start pretty quickly. The propane tanks were installed today. They've left the pressure test on them Thursday. They should come back and do final hookups and put the regulators in. I am working to find an MEP, which is an engineer that specializes in mechanical, electrical, and plumbing issues, to give us a schematic and a repair plan for the Andover Elementary School plumbing issues. I have been in touch with a bunch of the engineering firms. Most of them have frankly told me they're way too busy to be even considering about something if we want to consider construction this summer. I did find one firm out of Hartford that thinks they have enough bandwidth to get it done reasonably, called Aztec Engineers. So they're going to be out Thursday, and hopefully we'll get a proposal back from them on what it would cost to design the updates. Okay, so as far as I know, and I was trying to peruse through all the state laws that have cleared both the House and Senate, it does appear that they passed a state law that allows schools to keep 2% of their surplus if they're under budget. So this will bypass the Board of Finance, which has always been the agency which determined whether they were allowed to do that or not. There's a lot of other legislation that may or may not get signed by the governor. Still trying to figure all that out. Some of it's still up in the air. So that's it's been a kind of a crazy legislative session. As far as Bunker Hill Bridge goes, next on May 29th, we're going to be doing interviews for the construction inspection services. So we invited 4 companies to bid: SLR, WMC, AI Engineers, and Michael Baker International. The review panel is myself, Mark Burns representing the state of Connecticut, 2 other, Mark St. Germain is a retired Connecticut DOT engineer, and Todd Penny is the engineer for the town of Coventry, and Ed Serisley is also on that panel. So that was the panel that I was able to get approved by the state DOT, and they get final approval of the panel since they're the people that are actually paying for the work.
Wait, before you leave that, because it involves Bunker Hill Road, can you sit there and ask Todd Penny how the potential Algonquin pipeline project will impact that road? Because I want to make sure that if there's something that is being built in that area, that it doesn't impact traffic in the town of Andover. So I'd like to get as much information on that as we possibly can.
Understood.
Right.
I mean, where the pipeline crosses Bunker Hill is still in the town of Andover, not in the town of Coventry. So, yeah.
What's this
I know-
pipeline project, Jeff?
Excuse me?
What's the pipeline project?
There is a pipeline project that since I don't read the paper, I get all my news on the phone. A nice local resident, I won't name names, Diane Grenier, sent us a newspaper article on it. And she sent it to us today. So it is, I don't understand. What I went online to look for some more information, it's not saying as to what type of project. It doesn't appear to be the type of project that was proposed in Andover, but we just don't have enough information. So my concern is that project, which is scheduled, Scott, potentially for Bunker Hill Road, and what was the other cross feeder, Eric?
Hop River Road.
Hop River Road, that property is fairly close to Andover, and while I obviously have a problem with the expansion, and we all did in the town of Andover have a problem with the expansion of the pipeline and the work, my biggest concern is traffic. And if their plan is to put something in that area and they expect to drive a significant amount of trucks down Bunker Hill Road, I have a problem. So anyway, let's find out more information. It's on the agenda. It's not on the agenda, but it's got to be on our minds because we don't want it to negatively impact Andover.
Understood. So we still have about 12,500 left in the original DOT connectivity grant. If we do approve the e-bike loaner program, I would plan on spending a portion of that on that project. If not, we should probably start thinking about what else we should, what we could consider getting for the ball fields or potentially the jumpstart equipment for the playground. So just to be thinking about that. The second thing is Public Works installed the new pet waste dispensers that you had asked for a while back at the Veterans Memorial Field. And they also put up the additional signage. And then as Jay was driving away after just putting up the signage, he sent me a couple photos of a resident who showed up right after that and was walking, playing with his German Shepherd on the middle of the field, which is what we said before, is that you can put up all the signage you want. So my intention is to send those pictures on to the resident state trooper. And I don't think, since I don't believe we actually have an ordinance that prohibits it, he can go talk to the individual, but I don't know what else he could really do. I mean, you can't arrest him, I don't think. So that's where we're at with that.
Can we pass a minor ordinance on that?
Yes.
Then let's, for the next meeting, let's put that on the agenda.
I don't think you can well,
We just
you
passed the
can't pass
ability
something
to
with a
fine.
fine, 'cause that wouldn't be a minor ordinance. And if there's no fine, what's your enforcement mechanism?
Okay, so we have to have a major ordinance to place a fine, and we got to go to town meeting.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. All right. Keep going.
And that's basically all I have for my report, unless you have questions for me.
What's the chance of getting the $410,000 from?
I think actually it's reasonably good because it's a request that's right in the middle of one, we're not asking for a lot of money compared to most of the requests that come through that program. It's actually a very modest request through that particular agency. And two, because we haven't ever really applied for any sort of congressional funding before, they're more likely to give it to us than somebody else. And three, it was actually a pretty well-written proposal. So I think we stand a reasonably good chance of doing it. But it also depends on how the legislative sessions go overall. As most of you know, this should be something that goes through in September or October. But this year they didn't make their minds up on anything until April. So there's a significant chance, the way Congress has been working lately, that any funding request would be delayed. But it's also the first time I've tried for this type of funding. So I think we have a reasonable chance, but I don't know.
Anybody have any additional questions for Eric?
And actually part of the reason why I wanted to go that route is because one of our concerns is that because we just built the community center, anything we do now in terms of major construction activities is going to trip over into prevailing wage. But if it's a congressional appropriation, we're required to use prevailing wage anyway. So this is all bid at prevailing, all the bid numbers are at prevailing wage. So I don't care whether it's a prevailing wage job because it's federal money that would be spent on it. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I pursued that route.
Okay. Any other questions for Eric? Okay. All right, Eric, thank you very much.
Yep.
Item 7, a discussion with the assessor, John Chaponis, regarding information that we've seen the last few months. So I know John is on the meeting or was on the meeting. Is he on the meeting? There he is.
There we go. My computer locked up for a second.
Okay. All right, John, thank you for joining us.
Certainly.
Over the last couple of months, Eric has been providing us some information that we requested regarding property taxes for structures and then property taxes for personal property, or the assessment for the personal property taxes. And then also we requested last month a summary of the top 20 taxpayers for motor vehicles by resident, if all possible. We did not get that in our package, but that's something we'd like to get. But
And that is totally my fault. I did not pass that on to John, and for that, I apologize.
no problem. We can, I mean, listen, I said this at one of the last meetings. This is John's role, and the assessor's role is very important in that it generates all of our tax funding. But we as a board need to do a little bit better job of understanding how that base goes up and down and how the work is done, because John's role is very difficult to evaluate. And, you know, one of my first questions to you, John, is how do other communities evaluate the work of the assessors?
I'm not sure I understand the question you're asking.
Okay, so everybody who sits there and does a job, and especially when it's a complicated job like yours, there has to be some way to evaluate the work being done. So I'm asking you, do other communities, because I know Andover doesn't do it, do other communities, how do they evaluate the work being done by their assessor's office?
I mean, I don't think they treat this office different than any other office. I mean, you know, in my full-time town, we have a meeting once a year where you get evaluated, but you're getting evaluated on, you know, if you show up for work on time, and if you're not using too much sick time, and if you're treating people with respect. I mean, those are the kind of things we get evaluated on. Everything else, when it comes to real estate appraisal, that's an opinion of value. So you're not getting evaluated on the appraised value that you set on a property, if that's your question.
So basically, the mechanisms that the assessor's office in every community uses, the part of it is not, you know, in my field, it's you add and you subtract and you sit there and you do it. In Jeff Murray's field, it's engineering. There's certain rules that are followed. My question is, how do we as a community, especially a volunteer board, try to understand how you go at and how your assessor's office goes at and calculates out different things? And John, for what I'm getting is you're going to tell me that's not possible, but I really do want to get down to understanding it better, because I've been involved in town for a while, and I still don't exactly understand how the calculations are done and where you go. But I'll even skip that for right now. My question on the property owners that are available to us for all the properties. How does the assessed value on any rental property work? So someone like Dollar General, or I mean, they may own that property outright, but like the Kingsley Drive Apartments, that location is charging rent on a number of units. How does the assessed value change based upon any rental income collected?
Okay, so I'll back up to your first question before I answer the second one. There are some benchmarks in regards to what you just said. For example, when we do a townwide reevaluation, it has to be meet the performance-based revaluation standards with the state of Connecticut. Also, I mean, there are certain things like state reports that have to be filed timely, or there are penalties that get assessed against the town. So there are some things like that. I guess they just don't pop to the top of my mind when you hit me with the question for the first time. In regards to how property is appraised, there's three different methods. There's the sales comparison approach, there's the cost approach, and there's the income approach. The sales comparison approach and cost approach can be used on any kind of property. The income approach is typically reserved for that of a commercial property, with the thought process being that nobody buys a 30-unit apartment building to live in it. Essentially what they're buying is the income stream. They're buying the right to collect, you know, $20,000 a month in rent, or whatever, you know, the rent may be. What's also important is the expenses, because you could have two different apartment buildings that are both 30 units, and one, the owner could provide heat and hot water to all of them, and the second one could have individual units where they get their own bill. So it's not just the gross rent that comes into play, it's what we call net operating income. It's the gross income and then subtract all the expenses and what are you actually left with. And then that goes into a real estate formula called the income capitalization approach to value, which is based on a anticipated return on investment. So, you know, the investor is expecting a certain percent return on their money over the holding period, and all those considerations go into the capitalization approach.
So sales, cost, and income. So a property such as the Kingsley apartment, you might take all three of those into account and then determine the value that you come up with to determine the total taxes paid.
You wouldn't use the sales approach because you don't have enough sales in town, and the cost approach is certainly the least reliable unless you're dealing with something that's really fairly new. And a good example of something for the cost approach would be like a hospital, something that doesn't sell and doesn't rent, and you know, might be and newer. It's probably the least of the three approaches that get utilized. In Andover, with our commercial property, we predominantly used income approach.
Okay. And just so we as a board understand that income approach, you send out forms to all of those types of properties and they complete them from a standpoint of similar to a tax return where it's a independent or self-reporting.
All commercial property owners are required to file the income and expense statement in the state of Connecticut annually. They have to file it by May 1st, or there's a 10% assessment penalty that gets applied. We get a very successful return on the INEs that we send out in Andover, versus larger communities tend to get a worse return. The city of Hartford gets about 75% compliance, meaning they have 25% of the people who are willing to eat a 10% penalty rather than divulge the data. If they divulge false data, then they get the 10% penalty anyway.
Okay. And how many of those do we have in town?
I can't answer that question off the top of my head. I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but it's a small number because Andover is a small town with a very small commercial base.
Yeah. And when you say commercial base, just so we all understand, that includes the apartment complexes in town, or does it include?
I think we only have 2 apartment complexes in town.
You get the. Yeah. Okay. All right, and then so we'll sit there and we'll come back to that, and thank you very much for coming, because it's always helpful to hear it from you so we can understand what we're dealing with. When you move down to the property taxes, personal property taxes, can you just explain to us how those reports are filed, when they're filed, and then the work that's done on the, I'm sorry, let me go back one step first. Permits, how are permits evaluated on all those properties? Like, what work does your office do when someone files a permit on any property within town?
Sure. So we get a copy of every permit in town, and we put them in map and lot order, and I go out and take a look at every single property. We get permits for solar, and solar isn't taxed, but I still drive by and take a look at the property. Sometimes you get a permit for electrical and you get out there and there's a pool and a deck and a bunch of stuff, but the electrician pulled the permit for the ground fault. So you never really know what you're going to get. Sometimes we get a permit for a roof, and typically a roof by itself isn't something that I would increase the assessment on. But when you get to the property, you find out they did a new roof, siding, shutters, gutters, windows, doors, you know, the garage doors, the works. And you're seeing a lot of properties getting that facelift these days. So if they do a multitude of those items, you're talking about $40,000, $50,000 sometimes, maybe more, depending on the size of the house. So we do go out and look at every permit, and you know, if we're going to be on the street anyway, and they're a map and lot order, only takes a few more seconds to drive by a house that I added solar and see that, you know, it looks the same and it doesn't look like anything else was added. So I do drive by and look at those as well.
Right, thank you.
It's not the only, you know, source we use for discover, list, and value. You know, the definition of my role is the fair administration of the local property tax. And the easiest way to make it fair is to discover, list, and value everything that's taxable and make sure you're not omitting anyone. So another thing that we do is we look at realtor.com once a week. And I used to do it once a month. You can't anymore because they get listed on Thursday and they're under last best offers by Sunday these days. So, you know, when people put something up on realtor.com, that's the only time they don't come in and tell me that there's cracks in the basement and, you know, everything that's wrong. This is when they're telling you everything that they've remodeled, everything that's been replaced. And they're boasting about, you know, the finer attributes of the property. So we look at those and we compare them with our own data to see if there's any work that was done without permits.
And if you're looking at that information and you're looking at sales data, do you automatically increase the assessment if the sales price is above your assessed value?
No. So the law in the state of Connecticut says that you have to appraise every property as of the same date, and that date has to be the date of your last townwide revaluation. So our last townwide reval was for October 1st, 2021. So let's say there was a brand new street with a bunch of new houses and they were all identical and they were all selling for $450,000 on October 1st of 21. And now this year they built two more and they sold for $650,000. We still would value them at $450,000. Because the thought process is if you value everyone as of the same date, taxation will be fair. It wouldn't be fair if we were to crank the two new ones up to $650 and everybody else stayed at $450.
Okay. But in the next revalue, that $650 would then become the potential value for all the remaining houses in that complex.
It would, but I mean, you know, it's a sliding scale. If your grand list goes up 20%, you know, your mill rate's coming down 20%. It's a fallacy that a lot of people think we make money off reval. We, meaning the town, get additional tax dollars. We do not. I try to give an example of it's more like everybody in town went out to dinner and the check came and we divvy it up over, you know, who pays what portion of it. You really shift around who pays what. At our last reval, some properties on Andover Lake had tax bills that may have doubled. I mean, they went way up because the sales on the lake were going way up. And that wasn't true in the rest of town. The rest of the town might have went up 10 or 15%, but the lake went up substantially. So that's what revaluation is designed to do. It's designed to, in Connecticut, we tax people ad valorem, which is Latin for according to value. And because value changes over time, they picked 5 years as the time frame in which every 5 years we'll take a new look and we'll revalue everyone. And some people will go up and some people will go down at reval. We actually have people whose tax bills go down after revaluation.
Yeah. When you're dealing with personal property taxes, I know I was on that for a second, but I went back to the other thing on permits. Can you explain to us how personal property taxes work in town so we can understand the mechanism, and then let's walk through a couple things.
Certainly. So I think everybody knows that we tax real estate and that we tax motor vehicles. Personal property is kind of the one thing that gets forgotten because it doesn't typically ever touch the average residential homeowner. Businesses in Connecticut have to file a personal property declaration and pay tax on the equipment that they own. So something that you or I might own, like a lawnmower and a leaf blower and a weed whacker, wouldn't be taxed. But the minute, you know, I open John's Landscaping, you know, and I start doing it as a business, those items become taxable. Same for household furniture. You know, it's exempt in a residence, but it's taxable when it's, you know, used by a business. So they have to file a declaration once every year. It's called the Personal Property Declaration, or State Form M15. And they file that in our office, and they declare everything that they have. And it's a cost times depreciation, mechanism that values it. So it's basically, if you bought it this year, it's 95%, last year 90, 3 years ago 80, 70, 60, and it goes down to a 30% residual. If it's EDP, electronic data processing equipment, like computers or printers, it has an accelerated depreciation table because the used value on that stuff falls off the shelf quickly. So that goes 80, 60, 40 down to a 20% residual after 4 years. So first the values depreciate, then you add them all up and you take 70% for taxation. And that's if, there's no exemptions that were applicable, because the state of Connecticut is constantly passing more and more exemptions and sort of having carve outs for specific things that we can't tax, we can no longer tax.
Okay, so if we sat there and looked at two that are at the bottom of this list, the 7-Eleven, which is the gas station that's on Route 6. So just for everybody's understanding, that $99,000 is the current depreciated value of all the internal and external items that is needed to run that business.
So you're looking at 7-Eleven?
Yep.
And you have what, 99,290?
Yes.
I need glasses. It's so fine to read it. So first thing we would do is 99,2.
Eric, could you share that, please?
Sure.
It's in the packet on page 13.
I know, but
yeah.
So the first thing you would do is equalize it. So if you take that number and you divide by 0.7 or 70%, it inflates it to the 100% value, which is basically 142,000, 141,843. That's the 100% depreciated value. So if everything they owned was 7 years old or older, it would be about $500,000 worth of property. So unless you know the exact ages of all the different, items, it's difficult to sit here and say exactly what they have for a grand total.
No, understanding, just trying to get everybody to understand how it works. So the pumps that are utilized to pump gas, are they considered personal property?
Yes.
Okay. Are the coolers that are in the facility considered personal property?
That's part of the real estate.
Yeah. The coolers?
The built-ins, yeah. If they have a freestanding one that's standing in the corner, sure. But the ones that are built into the walls that you can load from the back, that's part of the real estate.
Okay. All right. But the pumps would be considered personal property. Okay.
It would.
And so so your office takes the returns that are completed by the taxpayer, evaluates them. How many audits do you perform, just so we understand, just mentally? Any?
No assessor's office I know of, except for 2 that employ an auditor, actually do their own in-house audits. In Colchester, we hire out a firm that does them, and we spent $5,000 doing audits last year on 5 properties, and it brought in $36,000 in revenue.
Okay.
It brought in about 15,000 a year, but we go back, we do a look back for 3 years.
All right, and then anything along the lines of manufacturing within the community, there's manufacturing exemptions that are provided to them?
That's one of the many exemptions that have been passed in the last few years. And a lot of them, when they're passed, they start out with state reimbursement. So when the manufacturing machinery and equipment exemption was first created, might have been about 12 or 14 years ago, it was only for 5 years. And the state would reimburse the municipality. And I used to file a state report with a claim, and I used to get reimbursement. Let's see, I'm going to say it was about 2007 or 2008, when the state really started struggling with their budgets, and they weren't even making their pension payments, and they started cutting aid to municipalities everywhere, and they eliminated the reimbursement on MM&E, manufacturing machinery and equipment. I know it was really bad for towns like East Hartford and Stratford with Pratt and Sikorsky Aircraft. They lost like $6 and $8 million a year in reimbursement. It's not that bad in Andover, but still it is a revenue loss. We have other exemptions they've eliminated too. The elderly, low-income elderly tax benefit, or some people call it circuit breaker. We used to get reimbursed for that. They eliminated it. Veterans exemptions, they eliminated the reimbursement on. And even now, with a general fund balance, or they like to call it the rainy day fund in the state of Connecticut, it's up to 3.9 billion, up from 3.3 billion last year. It's the highest it's ever been in the state of Connecticut. You would think they would reinstitute the funding on some of these programs that they created, that were their programs and they were supposed to pay for, but that has not happened. Last year, they threw $100 million at motor vehicle tax relief, but it only went to towns who had a mill rate in excess of $32.46. It's weird that they picked that number, but they picked that number because that's how high they could go and spend exactly $100 million. So we didn't see any of the motor vehicle relief money.
Okay. And then I know we don't have the motor vehicle information, but just so you can explain to everybody the motor vehicles, how our motor vehicles are taxed within the town or assessed, I'm sorry.
Sure. So whereas real estate is based on fair market value as of a given date, motor vehicles are not. It would be impossible for us to actually appraise motor vehicles. For starters, we're not used car salespeople, and everybody has their car at work when we're available to look at them during the day. So they're not taxed on their condition, their mileage, and all those factors. They're taxed on 100% of the clean retail value out of the NADA book, and then we take that value and we multiply it times 70% for an assessment. So if the clean retail is 20 grand, we're going to assess it at 14,000. And honestly, I mean, sometimes that vehicle assessed at 14,000 is only worth 12.5. I mean, or even less. The older the car gets, the further it gets away from being anywhere near a fair market value. But once again, it's not designed to be a fair market value. I try to explain it as a use tax. It's just it's the mechanism that they've chosen, and they would have the same assessment in each car. All of us would in any town in the state of Connecticut. We're not doing anything differently here. Pretty much everything I've said tonight is how it's done statewide across the board. Now, there's a law that passed 2 years ago, and it goes into effect this October 1st. And it says that commercial vehicles will no longer be taxed the way they were in the past, that commercial property owners would have to report those motor vehicles on their personal property declaration and give their actual cost of what they paid for the motor vehicle. They actually tried to strip that out this year and last year, and both attempts failed. It actually passed the House this year, and in the Senate, I'm not kidding, the very last night, the 11th hour, it might have been 7, 8, 9 o'clock, somebody put an amendment on it, and they passed it in the Senate with an amendment. So it was something different than what was passed in the House. They tried to send it back to the House and pass it with an amendment, and that didn't happen. So right now, we're still going forward under the premise that that would be the law this year. We would change the way commercial motor vehicles are taxed. And I was in a meeting today that was about an hour and a half, and it had people from Hartford, including 3 members from the governor's office. It was on Zoom, and we talked about this long and hard because I'm not sure we're actually ready to implement this. Our software vendors are not prepared for this, but as of right now, that's the direction we're heading.
All right.
Interesting. So can I ask?
Yep.
So could you go over the cell towers and I see like AT&T and T-Mobile, are those the ones that have the arrays on the cell towers?
So there's a couple different components with cell
Yeah.
tower taxation. The first one is the real estate. Let's say that, there's two houses side by side and one of them gets a cell tower built in the backyard because the land abuts Route 6 and it's kind of up on a hill and it's a great spot and they wanted to put a cell tower there. Even though it's a residential property, we're going to go back and we're going to increase the value of that real estate because they have a 20-year land lease with the cell tower company and they're collecting somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800 a month, sometimes even more than that if it's a really hot location. And if you were looking at those two houses, Scott, maybe you wouldn't want a cell tower in the backyard, but if you knew they were going to pay $1,800 a month, you might say, I'd rather take that house and I'd be willing to pay more. It usually equates to about $180,000 to $200,000 more that we appraised the real estate for, just for having the land lease for the pad. That's the real estate owner. Rarely do the cell towers own the real estate. So there's first that component. The second component is the tower itself, which, believe it or not, those monopoles are not all that expensive. And that personal property can be taxed one of two ways. They can either A, report it on the personal property declaration to the municipality, or they're allowed to report it to the state of Connecticut and pay on a $41 mill rate, and then the town gets reimbursed. When they pay at the state of Connecticut, they use a much faster depreciation table. And excuse me, that is also like EDP, electronic data processing, computerized equipment that depreciates quite quickly and gets replaced quite quickly. So those are the two different ways a cell tower will get taxed. There's the land and then there's the personal property itself.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but you have both, like, for instance, Crown Castle who owns the tower, and then each particular company like AT&T, whatever, owns their own transmitters, correct? And those are taxed separately?
They are, but they're not, this isn't $1 million worth of equipment. It's not as expensive as you might think. And when 4 or 5 different people sign on to a tower, that's when the landowner gets more and more. That's why I said they could be getting anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800 or even $2,000 or $2,200, depending on how many people put an antenna on the tower. My experience is the majority of the time, the guy who owns the tower, the pole itself, is not one of those companies. He owns that pole and he offers it out for Verizon and T-Mobile and those companies to drop one of their antennas on them. And sometimes next time you look at a tower, you might see one at one level where it's like coming off here, and then there's another one here and another one a little bit higher. Those are the different antennas, and they're at different altitudes on purpose.
So Crown Castle is the owner of the pole?
Who's Crown Castle? I honestly don't. Oh, okay. Yes, it says right there in the notes, cell tower. So they might own, I'd have to pull the declaration to look at exactly what they have. Who put the notes there? Because I didn't do that.
I put the notes there after talking to Roberta.
Okay.
And then there's a Cellco partnership, says cell phone tower also.
That one I know for a fact is a tower company. But all our towers are over 7 years old. They're fully depreciated. They're probably down to 20%, then times 70% for taxation.
Well, that's why it's so low.
But
they're not as expensive right out of the gate as you might think. You'd be surprised.
But if that was the case, then don't you go onto the income formula to sit there and
Right,
see?
yeah, change how you tax them then.
I mean, listen, we're just trying to understand this, so we'll circle back to this because I don't want to kill this.
Well, before we circle away, let's be clear that you can't use the income approach on personal property. When we talked about the income approach, we were talking about real estate, and everything that we do is strictly governed by state statute. So all I can do is what the law allows for.
Okay, but they also, on the cell towers, they're also updating all of their equipment, all the time to make it better. And I mean, they don't leave it and be stagnant. They sit there and update like Eric wants to do with all our truck fleet, might be a different analogy, but they're going to change every 5 years. So they're really going to a higher level of dollars related to this new equipment that they bring in, and that's only if they tell you.
Okay, so when it comes to national tenants, my experience in being in this business, they're usually 100% spot on. And a lot of times they have a firm that's filing it for them. They absolutely do upgrade their equipment, Jeff, and it's probably every 4 to 5 years. When I said tower, I meant the tower. I didn't mean the antennas. The tower is just an aluminum pole, and those are all more than 10 years old. So you have the tower company as number one, then you have the different cell companies, and then you have the landowner underneath. We actually do use the income approach on the income that's given to the landowner. That's how we end up adding anywhere from $180,000 to $250,000 to the value of the real estate. So trust me, if it's out there, I'm taxing it.
All right, did anyone else have any questions for John before we let him go? John, thank you very much for coming. It's something that we probably need to do more often because we all need to be better educated as to how we're taxing the community and understanding how it's working, and sit there and see if there's anything that we're identifying out there that's a little different. And Eric, if you can, for the next meeting, please obtain the highest paying motor vehicle residences so we can understand that, and businesses, because I'm more interested in the businesses than I really am the residents, but it would help. I mean, this information is great for us to get a better understanding of who's getting taxed what within the community. So,
Thank you, John.
John, thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
All right. We're going to move on to item 8, old business. 8A, the Joshua Trust discussion. I'll start this one. I spoke to, I'm sorry, I forgot John's last name. Eric.
Hankins.
John Hankin from Joshua Trust today. And I spoke to him about the different options related to the properties, and I talked to him specifically about the fact that because there was so much opposition, and I know there's a lot of people that are in favor of the potential trail, but because there's so much opposition at this point in time, and because the flip-flopping back and forth between where it goes and what parking lot to use and not use, I told him that I didn't think that it would pass. So unless someone from this board wants to make a motion to sit there and vote on it, I would like to move on. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 8B, community center construction update.
Okay, so the community center construction is going pretty well overall. We have had to go back and revise some of the engineering sketches for the sidewalk locations because we ran into a couple things, one literal, one figurative. The literal one being the pathway connected to the town hall right at a column. And since most people are not capable of going through a column, we had to redesign it so that the pathway went around the column. The second thing, so I think the plan that we had and I sent to you depicted the new location of the pathway. I could certainly share my screen if you wanted to discuss that portion of it. And then we're getting fairly close to the end of the contract with Leading Edge. They seem to think they're 2 to 3 weeks out from having a turnover to the town hall. There's obviously quite a few things on the punch list that still has to be done, but they have timeframes for most of those things at this point. So that's my take on it. I'm happy to share my screen with the image I gave you, or entertain questions, or whatever.
before we get started, thank you for the information that you sent, but I would recommend that you get back with all of the committee members, including all of the committee members on that information, and make sure that they are in sync with what your changes are and what you're doing. So that's what I would ask. I mean, I saw the information this morning, and I think it'd be appropriate for you to share that with Adrian, Scott. I know Scott's seen it, but any of the other members of the community that were involved in that committee, it would be beneficial to get their input rather than my personal input. So just let me know that.
Okay, are you asking for a delay in construction? Because I
No.
mean, we're talking about pouring those sidewalks probably in the next couple of days.
Okay, so Scott, as our liaison from the Board of Selectmen, are you okay with where those sidewalks are going?
Yeah, I was there when we were discussing the location of those sidewalks, wasn't I, Eric?
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah.
and then the retaining wall being removed, are you okay with that, Scott?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, so I still would tell you, Eric, before, you know, if those.
The wall, the sidewalk in the back, it is not on the print. There's a couple other, did you read my email, Eric?
I did, and
responded to
when I sent that to you, what I said was that was meant to depict the location of just the front sidewalk. And the reason that was done was because our town engineer didn't use the latest print when when he added the new sidewalk locations and grades. So we don't actually have a map that shows all of the things that have changed in the past, plus the front. So this was only meant to give the contractor a guideline, elevations for putting that front sidewalk in, that alone. That's kind of why I passed this on to you, and I said that to you guys at the time, that's what that depicted. So yes, there's a sidewalk in the back that's not represented on that. The location of one of the basins and cleanouts is not located on that. There's a bunch of things that aren't indicated on that that print.
Okay,
He didn't have time? Is that what happened?
He started with an old print.
Well, part of the reason he started with an older print, Scott, is once we went back to the final print in what we presented to the boards showed the wall in place. So, but when we took out the retaining wall, because we frankly didn't have the money to afford the retaining wall, and we eliminated the patio, again, for the same reason, they went back to the last design that had grading and contours showing no retaining wall there. And he started with that one. And that was before we had made all the changes to where the rear sidewalks went and some of the drainage structure. So that was just, that addition was just to show grading in and around where the sidewalks were. So we had accurate numbers for the contractor. That's what that picture was meant for.
Okay. Well, if Scott is good with it, I'm good with it. So Scott, if you're good with it.
Good.
Okay. So Eric, please don't put construction on hold.
Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't insinuate that.
No, but I mean, if you were going to tell me that I had to get that approved before the sidewalks go in, that's what I would have had to do. I thought that decision had already been made, but
that's okay. But Eric, if Scott is good, I, as a member of the board, are good, and I would hope the other members of the board are good. So, anybody have any issues? Okay. The fit out of the building, Eric, in your in the package, you listed what your intentions were. I don't I personally don't have any problems with it. I'm sure there's going to be lots of things that we need to sit there and add to this. The question is, anyone going to have any problems if we use contingency to do this at some level, not 100%, but some level if Eric needs it? Anybody?
No.
Okay. So then Eric, continue to go through and do what you're doing, and just don't put us in financial jeopardy. So, and I know you won't. So
I won't put you in financial jeopardy.
The-
So. Should go.
The fit out of the kitchen, any additions is going to be added to the overall cost, isn't it?
not if they do
So
it a year
what,
from now.
what we would do with the kitchen, Scott, right now is we would buy the equipment. And because for instance, the ice maker is technically on wheels. The refrigerator is movable. The freezer is movable. Those are not built in. So we can get away with purchasing them without having to sweat. It's just an expense. It's not. So we can do that without sweating prevailing wage over that. So the only things I think where we're starting to get into a concern would be the audio visual stuff. Because
Right.
we are
I saw that you added that, and I thought that we couldn't add that.
Well, but the other thing is that as long as our own guys are installing it and we're just buying the equipment, I think we're going to be okay with that.
Well, how do we find out that you're certain? I think makes me concerned.
Well,
What about
let's
the
evaluate. We don't have to have this conversation in our meeting. Eric, please look at it and make sure that you're good with what we're doing. But the way that you broke it out in your list of how you wanted to attack it, I was fine with it. There's just a financial component that we're all concerned about. So
What
if
about
you
the floor in the
look at it-
kitchen?
Yeah.
What about it?
What are we going to still put the epoxy in there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have stripped it out if we absolutely had to, but at this point, there's no reason to.
I mean,
we are close.
if Leading Edge is willing to sit there and tell us they have 2 to 4 weeks left, you got to be really close. They know what's coming. There's
Right.
no big surprises. Hopefully, we're down to the very end and we understand exactly what we're dealing with. And all of the items that Eric has laid out will end up getting done in an appropriate timeline.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there anything on that list that you're not comfortable with purchasing, presuming it's not going to get us in hot water with prevailing wage? That's my question for you. Is there anything in that fit out that you're uncomfortable with or you don't want to spend on?
How tight is it right now if you're going to buy the audio visual equipment? And before you weren't going to?
Well, right now we got about a $15,000 cushion.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we wait until Leading Edge is done and then you'll really know what you got?
We can.
The only issue, and I do understand you want it outfitted so that July 1st, when we have a new person there, they're ready to go. Leading Edge is going to turn it over to you June 1st or June 15th?
Somewhere between those two dates is my guess.
Okay.
But we're wired for all this stuff, correct?
We are.
Okay, so I wouldn't sweat it. I mean, I would just wait till the building's completely done and then just buy the equipment.
Okay.
I'd be interested in helping with that actually, because I'm kind of a technical home theater geek. So
Yeah, you know what, Jeff, you and I haven't talked yet, but Eric and I were talking about some speakers and stuff, and I said you were the better. I could be on those conversations, but I felt like you were the better person to kind of lead that, so.
Yeah, let's just get together, have a meeting, and we can decide what our requirements are, and we can probably go out and find us some pretty good pricing on some equipment.
Right, and if you saw in my email, that's exactly what I said. I was hoping the two of you would give me a fit out list for that. Because
Not a
that ain't
problem.
my cup of tea.
Let's just get to the finish line first, and then we'll work on it.
Okay.
Maybe I can meet with you maybe in a week or two. We can go over the room and stuff and see what the wish list is.
Okay.
Very
All right,
good.
any other questions related to the community center? All right, Eric, thank you. 8C, discussion of blight and level involvement. Is there anything specific that anybody wants to talk about? Eric, are there any issues that are out there that are new to the situations?
Not new directly related to blight, no.
Okay.
I have a question, if I could. About the Barnett property, you talked about that. I was told that the Barnett property was up to snuff. Everything is fine out there.
I certainly don't believe so. I've made it clear to the zoning agent that he needs to keep working on that owner and get him to pay the lien that we have against his property, and B, keep cleaning all the junk that he has accumulated on his property.
So it isn't finished then? No.
Oh, as far as I'm concerned, it's slightly better. But he still has a couple dozen tractor trailers worth of crap to take out of there.
Okay. Scott, if you can circle back with Eric on any specific property questions that you
Okay,
have, and
thank you.
you can
Yeah.
report about it next month.
Yeah.
8D, the e-bike loaner program. So just from my standpoint on this, and Eric, I'll ask you this question to begin with. If I understood the initial part of this program, there was a grant just for the bikes. Is that accurate?
Correct. We got a grant to purchase the bikes, and then we got a little grant from the health department for the supporting equipment. And then we'd spend some of the money out of our old connectivity grant fund to purchase the bike walkers.
Okay, but from what I understood is that there were grants to assist with the potential purchase of the bikes.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We need to have a discussion on this program. So I know at our last meeting we discussed Kerma and Kerma giving a blessing on a potential e-bike program. And in your information, I am assuming that you got Kerma to give blessing on the type of program that we're discussing, with a corresponding waiver for anyone that utilizes one of the bikes.
Correct. And subsequent to that, at about 6:30, their attorney emailed me a revised waiver form that meets their language, which I'm happy to share. I can't say that I've even fully reviewed it yet.
I don't think we need to see it right now. We need to talk about the overarching issues related to the potential program.
Sure.
But just so I understand, at our last meeting, the way I understood it was there was a grant available. Our request was to sit there and determine if Kerma would insure the program and minimize the town's liability. And the answer is yes, with appropriate waivers to be filed or signed by users.
Correct. They were happy with the design, the overall design of the program and what we were trying to accomplish.
Okay. So now we'll just talk about individual opinions on this type of program. Now, from my perspective, I think it's just an opportunity for the town to expand its offerings. I don't necessarily look at it as a negative. I always look at if the insurance company is going to sit there and allow us to be covered, and this doesn't have to do with whether somebody gets hurt or not get hurt. That's not what I'm after. I'm looking at it going, the insurance company understands the program, understands the equipment that we're talking about, and hopefully it is e-bike specific. If it's grant funded and it doesn't cost the town any money, I'm in favor of it. So, and I know everybody else can have their opinion on it. But if it doesn't cost us money, and even if it had to be shut down, the town now has assets that it can be utilized. So that didn't cost the residents any money. Go ahead. Anybody else want to talk about this?
Well, you know my concerns, and it's not that we're going to be insured. It's just that, you know, it's a liability. I mean, these people that are going to be using these bikes, they're going to be operating at speeds way above their fitness that they could pedal on a normal bicycle. And I've really got concerns over this. And you're going to put novice cyclists. I mean, I've been riding for 30 years on the road, and I have a lot of experience. And I wouldn't put my wife out there on an e-bike in traffic in today's roads with the speeds that things are going. So we just don't have a full-time person. I brought the concerns up about if we get a flat tire or mechanical on the bike, and you will get flat tires, you will run over screws and stuff in the road, and you will get flats. And Eric says you could just pedal these things back. Well, these bikes are about 80 pounds, and you're not going to be able to pedal this thing back when you're talking to somebody in limited shape. So, just liability wise, if somebody seriously gets hurt or killed, it's not if we're going to get sued, it's going to be when we're going to get sued. And I don't want to put the residents to that type of liability. I mean, I always thought I'm a cyclist, but I just don't think the town has a place doing this, to be honest with you, especially e-bikes. If it was regular bikes, it'd be a whole different story. But I mean, these things are capable of traveling 20 miles an hour uphill on flats with people that could probably, with their fitness, pedal 8 to 10 miles an hour. And they don't have the skills or, knowledge to handle a bike at that speed around corners through stop signs. I mean, I raced a bunch of years and I have pretty decent handling skills, and I've had to do some pretty evasive maneuvers by, cars cutting off in front of me and other things. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. Like I said, I'm a cyclist. I support cycling, but from a town's perspective, I just don't think it's a good idea with the staffing levels we have. And also, I just want to add one more thing. This grant program, it's not just bicycles. They'll buy helmets, safety vests, all kinds of other things. So if we decided we weren't going to do this program, we could probably provide every child under 16, even adults, with free helmets in the whole town, if we chose to go that route instead. So that's just another option.
Okay. Scott?
I rode some e-bikes about a week ago. Me and my wife rode them. I was very surprised at how fast they were, how fast you could get them going. It was amazing. I was amazed. New technology. And, I think that I have a bicycle of my own. I just know that they're very fast. I don't have, if the waiver is good enough for I don't have a problem with anything but liability. The only problem I have.
Did you sign a waiver?
No, I didn't.
Did you just go to a bike store and test drive?
Oh, friends.
I got you. Okay. Well, I think all of us are in the same page. It's all about the liability.
Right.
We just don't want to have the town exposed in any way. So it really, in my head, it always came down to Kerma. Now, Jeff has other issues that he's not wrong on, do we have appropriate level of personnel? What happens when we have some flat and some tires? Those are all things to me. They're issues.
That's
but
the reality.
I think they can be overcome. My issue is if the liability, if the town does not absorb any significant level of liability, and Eric, what I would ask Kerma is, when is your due date on the grants? What is the timeline?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, if we don't approve this tonight, and we pushed it to June, are you in an issue related to the grant?
I don't know whether they would, I don't know.
Well, we already have the
Assuming if
grant.
you don't pass
When do we
it,
need the
they're just gonna give
acceptance
them the money
signatures?
back.
I'm
What?
sorry. I was talking to when we already have the grant. When do you need acceptance signatures?
They wanted them a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. Well, listen, if Kerma signed the waiver, the next question I would ask Kerma, I would just ask Kerma, if someone died, what is the exposure to the community? I would just go all the way to the very end and just say, what if the worst thing happened? Person had an e-bike, they were riding, got struck, killed. What would the town face? None of us want that, but there's liability in anything that gets done in the community. Everybody walking across roads, and obviously there's liability structures for walkways and all that stuff. But this is a different issue. This is something we're just concerned about. I think everybody's concerned about it. If Kerma came back and said if someone died, then they signed the waiver, this is what would occur, I would be okay with it.
So Jeff, I wouldn't have a problem if we had a mechanic or somebody verifying these bikes were in great mechanical condition every time they were taken out. The problem happens if somebody uses it and causes damage to it, doesn't say anything, returns the bike and it is damaged, the brakes or something like that, and it's not caught, and somebody does take the bicycle out and gets in an accident, we are liable because we're giving that person the impression that that bike is in good mechanical condition and ready for the road. And that's what kind of worries me, that we don't have anybody there that's capable of verifying that they're in good shape and they're in suitable condition to be out on the road. And another thing is, I'd be more comfortable with Kerma if, we did take these models of bikes, we sent them pictures and say, these are the models of bikes we're going to have. Are you still okay with this? Because I think there's a fundamental disconnect there over what an e-bike is and the speeds that these bikes are going to be going. And I just want to make sure that we're going to be insured for that, because if Kermit comes back and says, well, those aren't the bikes we were thinking about, but that's not what you told us, I want to make sure that we're going to get insured for those models and those types of bikes.
So
Eric,
if I had a regular pedal bike and I left the town hall and I went left, by the time I hit the base of that hill, I'd be going twice the maximum governed speed of an e-bike. So
Eric, totally understand, totally get it. And you and Jeff are total cyclists. The rest of us are trying to understand what's up. What Jeff is asking you is legitimate request. Even the waivers need to specifically identify the bikes that we're going to be, if we do this, be using in the program. Because he's not wrong. I mean, I know the insurance companies, it comes down to us understanding the insurance company understands every aspect of what we're trying to get to. And really it comes down to somebody gets killed, are we covered? Somebody gets killed and we're covered with these bikes. And I have no problem. I personally have no problem doing it because Jeff, I don't think,
what if the mechanic didn't properly tighten up the disc brake in the front and the guy smashed
the manufacturer could have done the same thing, and then you go through the whole thing. When people sue, but the issue is that I would go, we don't have to loan the bikes out to anyone, we don't have to rent the bikes out to anyone, right? We can sit there and say you're not qualified. Now, the question is who's doing that in town? And that's the employee issue that Jeff raises, which are all good things. But I still come back to, I would still go through it because everything's a risk, everything's a gamble. If it's being paid for not outside of tax dollars, other than managing the program, I'm good with it because we're offering up something different, some other type of recreation to mostly seniors. And I would assume, Eric, we're going to have an age limit on these.
Yeah, I wouldn't let anybody rent one older than 90. I mean,
Well, that was what I was asking. I wasn't asking for a top
I'm
end. I was
being
asking for a
facetious.
low end.
Yeah,
From like
we'll,
18 to 90?
21. I mean,
we'll make it adults.
Yeah,
What age do
21.
you want to set to it?
21.
21, fine,
21.
done.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ann.
Can I put in my 2 cents here?
Sure.
I guess I'm not thinking so much about maybe the liability. I'm thinking about the roads in our town. Most of them are narrow, no shoulders, no sidewalks. And where are people going to go with these things? If you have a rental thing or loaner thing, you're going to end up with all these people on the road with bikes. And it's going to cause all sorts of congestion. And just as a driver in a car, I don't like having to go around bikes like this. I'm not for it because I don't care to see that many bikes on the road. I rode
How many
bikes as a
bikes
kid.
are we
I
talking
rode
about?
bikes until I was in my
Wait,
20s,
how many
but
bikes are we
not in a
talking about?
country town like this.
Are we talking 2 bikes, 3 bikes?
Probably 3.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that 3 bikes will cause congestion within our town. And that's a good,
Well, maybe not
that is,
congestion.
I think Eric has done a very good job trying to identify bikes and trying to put bike signs up all over the place. I mean, I personally dislike cars that get too close to walkers and bikers. It bothers me immensely, but 3 bikes is not going to cause congestion on Andover roads.
No,
I mean,
I shouldn't have used that term probably. I guess
that's okay.
I don't care to add any bikes onto the road.
Okay, that's your opinion. I'm okay with it. I just don't, I
The
look
state
at it as
has-
an opportunity.
just to correct that, the state law has bikes have the same rights and duties as cars. And it's just that the cars don't give the bikes enough room a lot of the time. I mean, commuting, I'm going to ride to work tomorrow morning to East Hartford, and it's, I get a close call every day. It's a given. Somebody's going to pull out in front of me. Somebody's going to make a right turn into me. It's a given. And if you don't anticipate it, you're going to get hit. And that's one thing I'm concerned about. Somebody's buzzing along on these things and they're not really paying attention because they're not really putting the work in. And somebody's going to cut in front of them and they're not going to have the handling skills to stop in time or avoid it. And we're going to have a collision.
And listen, we're not making a decision today in my mind. We're having this conversation so everybody can voice their opinion. And Eric, I would sit there and I would ask you to go back to Kerma, put the brands and the types of bikes that were going to be potentially used in this program in the waiver, and then ask the specific question. If someone dies, what is the exposure the town, what is the liability the town could face? And just give us an answer on that, and then we can vote on it, up or down, because I don't think anybody, I mean, we might have 2 negative votes already, we might have 3 negative votes already, but it's a grant, it's somebody else's, it's state money or federal money, and I think it's something that we really should consider.
Will there be, I'm asking us to take like 16 steps backwards here. Just because of the timing of things. Will there be another opportunity for a grant like this? Like, what if I know we want to answer that question, you know, what happens, God forbid somebody dies. But what if we go with Jeff Murray's suggestion on taking the grant money this time and using it for something different, get all our answers and our concerns in place with who's going to be the mechanic and where we're going to house these. Will there be another grant that maybe we can use in the future? I don't want to rush into this.
I have no idea, Paula. I got this because I was willing to jump on it within a week or 2 of when the state released the first funding, because they had a very fast initial deadline, and I met that and I got it. Do I know in a month from now? I know they're pushing to have all the money spent by the end of the fiscal year. So can I turn around and write another grant for something completely different and get it funded? I don't know. If you turn it down today, I'm going to notify Prague that we're turning down the grant. I don't really have any other option because they're not going to sit on the money for us to spend the next, 6 months deciding whether we want to do the program. And look, you're the board. If you decide you're not comfortable with this, vote it up, vote it down, let's move on. Because I mean, this is, it's a pretty simple program. Kerma's told us they're going to cover us, and they've said what they want to see in the waiver to maximize their protection as an insurance company. There's not a whole lot else I can give you. So if it's not acceptable this month, putting it off a month isn't going to do you any good anyway. So if you're not comfortable with it, vote it down. Let's move on.
I think we're just trying to understand. We've got two cyclists that are giving us conflicting info. This is my thoughts and what I'm trying to understand. I have two people that I trust that are cyclists. I'm getting conflicting info, so I'm just trying to understand.
Yep, and I commute daily on an e-bike.
So a couple more last questions and then we'll move on. I think this was already answered, but I wanted to have a quick discussion. Are there other towns in the area that have this program with e-bikes?
Not exactly like this, not locally. I gave you all contact information for a program that's been running for many years in Ohio that is starting to adopt e-bikes. They've been running e-bikes for about a year and a program fairly similar to what they are, other than they use their librarians and they check out bikes like books.
Yeah, Paul, there's no program in Connecticut or New England that I could find. And most of these companies that do this are third-party private companies that go into places like Line Bike in Hartford and some of these rental scooter companies in Boston and Nashville and some of the bigger cities. And they just basically contract with the city to provide the bikes. And they're a standalone company. And so the municipalities don't run it. So I was trying to find something in the whole area that was similar to this, and we would be the first of anybody in New England doing this, or even this in the Eastern Seaboard. So that's why I'm a little nervous about it. There's no model or success rate of these things, and the crash data and everything's just got me a little nervous. That's all. Yeah. And I just really don't want to expose the taxpayers in town to that kind of liability. I mean, Jeff, I love the idea, but.
Jeff, you made me excited. We would be leaders. We would be leaders.
We'd be the first one
soon. Oh my God, I'd be so excited.
But there's a reason that other towns aren't doing it, and we need to find out why.
Eric, please find out the issues for the insurance. The last two issues I have for the insurance company are the issues that Jeff raised, understanding that these are the bikes, the actual models and the speeds and everything else.
So
we're talking about class 1 e-bikes, which is the lowest rated class of e-bikes.
I'm great, but what Jeff Murray is expressing is accurate. These are the exact bikes. You're writing the waiver for these exact bikes.
Okay. You know what? I'll just turn the grant down and we'll move on.
Eric,
we're not going to wait.
Eric. I'm asking you to do two things. It's not really hard. The bikes in the waiver, make sure that Kerma understands it, and what happens if someone gets in an accident and dies. That's it. You can send us an email tomorrow and we can all correspond on this and make a decision.
Yeah, if it comes back fine, are we all on board with the e-bike program then?
Well, if you want to make a motion, if those two things are done, it's a question of, honestly, whether you, me, and Paul all vote together, because Jeff Murray has stated his opinion no, Ann has stated her opinion no. I mean, that's just a question. I'll make a motion. We move forward with the e-bike program. contingent on Eric getting Kerma to approve the exact models to be purchased and to give us an understanding of a catastrophic incident and what would occur to the town's taxpayers.
And you can add to this won't start until we get an appropriate person on the.
Correct. I mean, that's to be understood that it's not going to start unless we get an affirmative answer on both those questions, that they'll cover the bikes and that the exposure to the town is not catastrophic.
Yeah.
And to me,
I'll second that.
catastrophic, and to me, catastrophic is any extra money.
Okay, well, I will reach out to Krog, and
Okay.
if they're willing to delay implementation, I will ask those questions of Kermit. Because I kind of agreed I would give him a response tomorrow morning.
You can tell them what we said. We're gonna, did you second that, Scott?
Yeah.
Did you second that?
Yes.
Okay, so as a board, any further discussion on this? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? All those that abstain? And abstains, okay. All right, so a 3-1-1. Eric, please get us the information, email it all to us, and then we can sit there and work our way through that.
All right, I'll
Okay.
see whether Krog will sit on it for another period.
Well, you're not telling Krog they're going to sit on it. You're telling Krog that you're getting one more piece of information for the Board of Selectmen and it's been approved. Right? And if you get a negative answer from Kerma, then we're going to tell you, okay, then tell Krog we're not going to take it. But in my mind, we're taking it as long as you get us positive answers. Okay. All right. 9, new business, discuss and act upon the following. And 9A, road closure for Cider Mill Memorial Day Road, Board of Selectmen acting as the local traffic authority. Do we need to make a motion on this, Eric?
If you want to allow them to close the road, then yes.
I did not see that in our package, that motion. No, was it? Did I miss it?
No, there is no motion. They asked me whether they could close the road. I said, that's not my choice. That's the local traffic authority.
So I'll make a motion that we allow the road closure for Cider Mill for the Memorial Day Parade.
I'll second.
All right, all those further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Along on the same topic, I've talked to some of you about the parade, so the thought process was maybe we all march together. So I don't know if we want to talk about that tonight or another time, but John McCall is looking to get some information back to him on who's available and what we're going to be doing that day. So
Okay. I will get you my schedule. I know I saw Jeff Murray respond on the car issue, so I know there's some of us that may or may not be here. So if we can all communicate with Paula individually, that would be great. Okay. 9B, the job description for the senior community center director. I read it, was in our package. Does anybody have any issues related to the job description? All right, so I'll make a motion that we authorize Eric to utilize the job description to hire a community center director.
I'll second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, 5-0.
Can I ask one further question related to that? Is who do you want the interview panel to be for that position?
Well, you would be on it and we'll sit there and identify where we're at. What's the timing? So it's May 13th. Are you anticipating putting this out and then having the interview sometime in June? What is your plan?
Well, it's going to depend somewhat on tomorrow, but presuming the budget passes tomorrow, I would plan on this going in the River East, not this Friday, but the following Friday, and then advertising it statewide through CCM and CROG.
Right. Why don't you reach out to, I mean, I would participate if you needed it. I would sit there and just reach out to individuals that you might want. I mean, you know, interview panels of more than 3, you know, 5 are kind of unwieldy. Is it unwieldy or wieldy? No.
Not a good idea. How about that?
Not a good idea. Yeah. So reach out, Eric, and whoever wants to participate, as long as they meet your criteria for the numbers, no problem. And you probably should reach out to one of the other communities, Columbia or Hebron, and get somebody from their rec department to sit there and assist with the interviews. Okay, 9C, proposed community center policies. I didn't see that really in the package. I would ask you, Eric, to send out your
That's page
outline.
31 of the packet.
If they're in page 31 and I didn't see them, what I would ask is I would like to sit there and evaluate them. I thought that was all part of your qualifications. That was part
No,
of the job description.
no. So my concern is I've got a lot of requests from various different groups who all are convinced they're going to
Oh.
be allowed to store stuff in the communities.
It was your storage policy then.
Yeah.
Oh, storage policy. I was sitting there-
Storage policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Let's go back on that, because you and I had a conversation about the new
storage
it's
policy.
gonna take a while to get built, but the new facility for the buses at the old community center, the old
Correct.
firehouse. That's where storage has to be. I mean, that's the only place it's going to work. It's not going to go in the new community center. We're not going to let people sit there and dump stuff in that building. You and I, Eric, had a conversation about extending the height on the second floor of that building where the buses are going to be parked. So we could have garage doors and then identify a garage door for each group that needs it. So the seniors can get one, the rec commission can get another, the town can get another. You know, just as a storage place, and that I think mentally is the only place I can envision where storage really will work in town, because it can't go in the town hall, it can't go in the new community center. And anybody asking for storage has to understand that we're not going to let it become cluttered, unless anybody's against that theory.
No. When we were doing the whole bus thing, we decided that with upstairs was going to be mostly for.
Yeah, it should
Yeah.
be. And I had touched Eric and I forgot when we were doing it, but I was like, we raised the roof to be the second
Yeah.
floor so that you can provide additional storage for community organizations, and just say, hey, listen, this is your 100 square feet or 200 square feet or whatever you can give them. And here's your garage door access. And in the middle, put chain link fence to separate side to side. That's cheapest way. It works at warehouses that I've had to deal with, and go from there. But anybody that's asking you for storage at the new community center, Eric, you can tell them the Board of Select, at least. I would assume we're all on the same page. You can tell them the Board of Selectmen is not going to allow that facility to get cluttered. All right.
Period.
Are there any other issues on the proposed community center storage policies? No.
Nope. Are you okay with signing it and putting that actually in place? Or do you just want to keep it oral tradition, or what do you want to do?
Thought he already signed it.
Let me read it. Let me read it, and I'm pretty sure I'll sign it. Does anybody on the Board of Selectmen have a problem with me signing that letter or something close? Okay, good. We'll get it done, Eric. We'll get it done this week.
Okay.
All right. There was a vendor permit in here for solar company, William Bars from Trinity Solar. hadn't Trinity Solar been up before, or is this a new company?
No, I believe it's just a different person from the same company.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never met the individual, so I really don't know them.
Okay. I believe we approved the last one. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve this?
I make a motion to approve, I don't know, what are we calling this?
Vendor permit.
Vendor permit.
Vendor permit for William Bars of Trinity Solar.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed, no. All those abstained, no. Okay. 9E. Charter Revision Committee. We need to make a motion to establish the initial
Hearing date.
public hearing date. So
Do you want me to put up the town's attorney's motion? What he's
sure,
recommending you approve?
put up the motion and the legal notice for publication in the River East.
Okay, I think that's it.
That's it. So Dennis sat there and wrote it. So I'll just make a motion that I'll make a motion to implement the legal requirements of the Charter Revision Commission and authorize legal notice to be posted by the town clerk to set a special meeting to be held on May 22nd. And using the language provided by the town attorney.
Second that.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So Eric, you'll sit there and give, I know Carol has the legal notice. So the motion
Yep.
was written by Dennis. You can date it. It
Yep.
approved 5-0. And then because of the timing of that hearing, I think it's appropriate that the board discuss items that we would like the Charter Revision Commission to look at, as Dennis discussed at the previous meeting that we held to appoint committee members. If we can sit there and have those issues, we can sit there and request that the Charter Revision Commission look at those issues. Anybody? All right, from my standpoint, there are a lot of dates that I sit there and look at from the charter that I would like to sit there and see consolidated or timed out appropriately, so we are in line. One of those is November, codifying the November elections so that we have November elections within our town. And then one of the other things as far as timing goes is trying to get the budget referendums to line up with the RAM budget referendum so that there's only one day of voting, if at all possible. That and just governmental efficiencies that I would like to sit there and see be put in place to sit there and make us work as efficiently as we possibly can. So, anybody else?
You have my list.
Okay, we'll provide your list to the group. Anybody else? Okay. So the timing of what's going to occur is the legal notice is going to go in the paper. We'll have a meeting on the 22nd of May. That meeting will fall into 3 parts. There'll be one, the beginning of the meeting will be for the committee to elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson. There'll be the public hearing to get community input as to charter revision and what it means and what they would like to see. And then there'll be a meeting after that of the Charter Revision Committee to sit there and set a schedule as to how to get together and what to do. That's it. Anybody have anything else related to the Charter Revision Committee?
Did we specifically say just now what is going to be
Yeah.
focused?
It's all verbal, Paula, so you can say anything you want and they're gonna sit there and evaluate. Jeff Murray wrote his down because he did that before we even established the Charter Revision Committee to begin with. I mean, if you'd like to, you write them down. I mean, what Dennis didn't want to have happen was that the board as a total group wrote 6 or 7 things that they had to undertake, and then those things have to be sat there and specifically undertaken by the board or by the committee. So he was like, I mean, just like we did the last time, we didn't write anything down. We just told the chairperson what we were interested in doing, and they executed it.
Okay. My concern or thought is just everybody knows that we've got a limited amount of time. I just don't want to overload the committee with a bunch of tasks.
Yep.
That's my thought. I agree with you. I think we should streamline as best as we can the number of meetings with having people come and vote and doing things like that for sure. So, but I don't want to give them verbally 5 different tasks to try and accomplish in a shorter period of time. So
Understood.
So the verbal tasks that we're talking about tonight, as soon as they come out of our mouth, they're
Well, you're
or
going to
just-
be able to obtain, you're going to be able to attend all the meetings if you choose to anyway, but you know, the goal of the last group was, you know, what we expressed was a potential bifurcation of the budget that went to the town, the Charter Revision Committee, and that actually got executed, and it came back and it got passed by the voters. So it ended up being 5 things that Charter Revision Committee did, or 6 things that they put out, and 5 of them got approved. And I would anticipate that that would be the same way that this would occur. This time they would be small sections to sit there and get voted on and sit there and see what we can do. The biggest issue is that, as Jeff has expressed and Paul has expressed, try not to do too much. But if we stretch a little bit and we're the first out there and it gets voted down, it gets voted down. That's democracy. I mean, to be really honest, I wasn't in favor of the bifurcation. We put it up to allow people to vote on it. It got voted on and won. That's part of the charter. So
that's right.
I'm okay. I'm okay with the democratic process. If you lose, you lose. So,
Right.
okay, we all work together. All right. We can move on to item 10 now. Approval of the meeting minutes for 4/11/2024. It was a special meeting. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'm looking for. I make a motion to accept the special meeting minutes of April 11th, 2024.
Second that.
Right, Anchor May seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, so now we're going to go on to the treasurer's report. Does anybody have any specific questions related to the treasurer's report? Okay. Eric, just a question for me. Are the revenues are not split in the budget line? That's the total year to date. So right now we have uncollected, we're short $115,000 in total revenue, correct?
That wouldn't surprise me. Hang on. I fast forwarded too far.
It's page 45 of the packet. So I just want to make sure that this is the year-to-date budget number. It's $12,434,060. That was the budgeted number To date, we've collected 12,318,645,000. We're as of April, so we have May and June to collect 115,000 to be equal with our budgeted number or exceed it,
Yeah, that seems about right.
right?
Um,
And then if I go down to the tax collector side, right? The tax collector wrote us some information saying how much money we had to collect. We still have $370,000 of total taxes to collect for last year.
so
According
you're
to,
wondering why those two numbers aren't the same in
no, it's a budget. I'm not asking that. What I'm asking is we are really close to our revenue number with 2 months to go. That's all I'm saying.
correct, but there's two factors into that. The first is in any given year, we don't collect 100% of the taxes, so that shows up as a deficit. But we also don't account for the supplemental not supplemental appropriation, but the supplemental tax bill. And those two every year just about balance each other out. So that's why you see us 100,000 down now, while we haven't collected 300 something thousand in taxes, because we've gotten in a couple 100,000 on the supplemental taxes, which we're not accounting for. It's a simplification, but those two things usually just about balance out every year.
Okay. Actually, let's look at that. Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, if you go and bounce, I mean, this is just for accounting kind of nerds. Things don't line up, things make sense, don't make sense. So right now the page 45 says we collected $9,934,367 of taxes, including liens, supplemental motor vehicle. And then you go to the tax collector's report, and those numbers that are in the middle of the page don't, it says 9,660,000. So those are always where I have problems where things don't match, but we'll get on it. But I like the information provided by the treasurer in that department. And if we, in this information that's on page 45 reconciles to the bank. And Eric, we are reconciling.
We are reconciling.
So we are reconciled for the month of April.
Far as I know.
Perfect. All right. Anybody else have any other questions related to the treasurer's reports?
Nope.
So we go all the way to the bottom, which is page 50. I mean, we have other things that we have to spend. Those transfers are already made. Okay. All right, Eric, any information you can provide us next month as to if we're short anywhere, or I would assume next month you're going to come to us with any internal transfers you need to make?
Yes, maybe.
It's the only month you got left, Eric.
I understand that, but we can actually do the transfers after July 1. We just gotta stop spending money after July 1.
Got it. Okay. All right. Tax collector's report, which starts on page 57. So as I was saying, that this is the information, page 57 is the information off of the, what's the name of the software, Eric?
Oh, God, you're killing me.
I mean, it's used by the assessor's office and the tax collector's
And the
office.
tax collector.
I'm
blanking on it at the moment.
I'm sorry, I blanked on it too.
Not Vision Appraisal. It's the other one.
It's the company that sends out all of the bills, and
Right.
they do all that work. So, okay, I should know it. So $10 million of total billing, 9,600,000 of collections, $370,000 of remaining to be collected from the current year. There's other bills that are out there. If you look at page 58 and you look at the bottom of page 58, there's $684,000 of uncollected taxes, and it lists all the years that it relate to. And then the tax collector sent us information about delinquent tax bills and what her plan is related to that. Does anyone have any questions related to that? Okay.
So are you generally in favor of authorizing the tax collector to use a state marshal to do alias tax warrants
Um,
and to actually go after people?
and I am, what are the related fees to that?
So the related fees are paid by the person that owes the taxes, not the town. The town is held harmless with this. Whatever they collect, the town gets.
Okay. I have no problem doing it, but what are, especially car taxes, go get it. Because if, what about liens? Have we applied liens on all of the old delinquent real estate taxes?
There should be liens on everything other than the latest round, the ones that were just delinquent as of May 1st. There's a specific date cutoff. They've all been sent delinquency notices and told that they're about to get put on they're about to get lien. In fact, I've gotten a couple panicked calls from residents that are very upset that their property is going to get lien. But that's
how it is.
Life. It's a certain number of days after it's due, and I don't remember what that exact date is. I want to say it's 35, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, they do get automatically filed.
Okay. I mean, I know we probably haven't done alias tax warrants in years. When's the last time we did them?
5 or 6 years ago.
Alias tax warrants we haven't done since I've been here. We were using a collection agency to go after people, but that wasn't really all that successful. They didn't really collect all that much. They got a lot of people wound up, but they didn't get a lot of cash. So just so that you know, a state marshal has the ability to seize bank accounts to pay the bills. So if he can figure out where a person is and figure out who they bank with, he can go in and seize the money that they have to pay the town's debts. So it's definitely a fairly aggressive thing.
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that?
Like a great over.
I'll make a motion that we allow the tax collector to utilize the alias tax warrant process.
I'll second that.
All right. Further
Double
discussion?
seconded.
Well, we'll give it to you, Scott. Further
Just-
discussion on this topic? No? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. There were departmental reports within our package. Anybody have any questions on any of them?
One more thing.
One
There's
more thing.
one
Yeah, we need to
request.
apply. I make a motion that we provide a tax refund for excess payments to Enterprise FM Trust of $467.07.
I'll second.
All seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Anybody have any other questions on department reports? Okay, Eric, is there anything that you want to point out on any of the department reports to us?
Nope. Nothing in particular.
Um, look at that. So just so we understand this, because we talked to the assessor, let's talk about this page. Page 64, Eric. That is the Board of Assessment Appeals, or what is this BAACOC summary? Are those reductions in assessment granted by the Board of Assessment Appeals, or are those granted by the assessor's office?
Some of those are, by, if it says BAA change,
Yeah.
those are ones where the Board of Assessment Appeals has lowered the assessment of a property. If it's just C, it's something else. It's either sold to a different owner or something that got added or something got subtracted by the office because they realized there was an error or a car got added or subtracted.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the 353 Lake Road property, there's a $91,000 reduction granted by the Board of Assessment Appeals. And is that on the house that has the 3-car garage, or is that the one that has the structure that has issues?
That is the one that is currently does not have a certificate of occupancy. That's the new one.
Okay.
They appealed their assessment and used the same appraiser everybody does when they want to show that their house is worthless, and the BAA agreed with them.
Okay. But those are the only two that came to the BAA and got approved.
As far as I know, in this period,
Site.
yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Any other questions on any of the department reports? All right, Eric, is there any correspondence?
The only correspondence I had was related to Joshua's trust. That's in the packet. And I did get a letter from Mrs. Post, who seems to be mad at quite a few things. Most of which is under the control of zoning. So I have followed up with both the zoning agent and the wetlands agent to attempt to address her concerns. She also had some concerns over the future of Hutchinson Road.
I've been handling that situation. Just to let everybody know.
Okay.
For Mrs. Post.
For Mrs. Post or for the town?
I was helping Mrs. Serenity Post, yeah. Her agent.
Scott, so you're on the zoning board and you're helping Mrs.
No. I went down there and inspected something for her, and then that she asked me to check for it, and I checked into it, and then I got the appropriate people down there and they went and did their due diligence.
Okay. So more of this, the taxpayer reached out to you as your role and as your relationship with her.
Exactly.
And you're assisting to sit there and get the right decisions made.
Assisting the town. Yeah, the town went and did exactly the right thing, and everything is handled.
Okay. And is she happy with her current situation?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Eric, what are the pictures at the bottom, like of the culvert? Which culvert are we dealing with?
So that was a culvert that was repaired on Bunker Hill Road.
Yeah.
A smaller culvert on Bunker Hill Road that had some significant erosion at the downstream part of the pipe that Public Works then filled in and rebuilt the banks.
Okay, got it.
With
So
approval of the
all of that rock input is Public Works pushing
Correct,
rocks in there to rebuild the wall.
correct.
Okay. So if there's no correspondence and we're good, I think we'll move on to public speak. One second, I'm just trying to fit through my stuff. So we'll start with Diane Grenier.
I'm all set. Thank you very much. Always entertaining.
You're welcome, Diane. Glad we can make you laugh, I would guess is what we probably do. Bill Penn.
I have things I was gonna say, but I think I'll just let them pass. Thank you all for your time and energy and addressing all these things for the town. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Leanne Hutchinson.
Yes, I'd like to address a couple of things that you spoke about tonight. One is the senior center and the community center, and the other is the Bunker Hill and Hop River natural gas activity, which apparently it sounds like just came to some people's attention, including mine tonight. I appreciate, as far as that item goes, that you are going to look into it quite a bit more, it sounds like. To back up for a second, living on Bunker Hill Road, I can't imagine that the road is proposed to be closed for as long as it is, just due to the small size of the bridge. So I'm hoping that anything that can alleviate that will be done, because it's already stressful for people to have to travel around. And then also it's stressful to worry about the fire and emergency services possibly having to come from Coventry due to any closure on Bunker Hill Road Bridge as it is. So I appreciate whatever you can do with this natural gas activity, I don't know what else to call it, on Hop River Road, because if there is going to be any increased traffic, people in Bunker Hill Road, if there's any issue with going down to Parker Bridge Road, or if you're going toward the Willimantic area, some people do use Hop River Road. So again, if there's some sort of project going on there, any information we could have and traffic control, if that becomes an issue, is going to be very helpful. Regarding the senior center, I understand that you want to do as much as possible with volunteers, and that's ideal. I used to work in a senior center. I did programming. Programming itself, there were things that go on, several times a week, card games, exercises, those are usually done all the time. And there were things like trips and one-time speakers and one-time activities that are a different category of programming. And I was going to use the word unwieldy until Jeff or somebody used it already, but I thought at reading this at first is that having as many people, and I know you've already voted tonight, is going to be a little bit unwieldy, especially since this is a new project for everyone. So I just, as a citizen, am wondering if a couple of these committees who already do important work could have more emphasis maybe later on, like maybe the library and the beautification committees, because while they have a role, I just wouldn't want to see a senior center director come in and, as you already discussed again tonight, who's going to be in charge. And again, with regard to committees and volunteers, especially with Kathy Palazzi, with all the work that she does, stepping back, I hope there's going to be a focus on not just volunteering, but somebody in charge of transportation, somebody in charge of something it sounds basic, but it's important, as a receptionist, somebody answering the phone. I know Eric has an awful lot on his plate and usually answers his own phone. So I really appreciate that. But, again, because it's new, I think a lot of it is unknown. And I think if we have a little more direction, that's going to be very helpful.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Ed Srisley.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I want to compliment or add on to Bill Penn's. Thank you for all of your hard, dedicated hours of volunteer work for the town. It's amazing how much work you guys get done. And just want to address the concerns, many valid concerns raised by Jeff and Ann regarding safety and traffic congestion with bicycles on the road. To both of those comments, I'd like to say that if we can get eventually get our multi-use pathway down Route 316, obviously we can get all the bikes off the road and go down a multi-use dedicated pathway onto the rail trail and get to all four corners of our town on an e-bike safely to address the safety concerns. And we could even, of course, request that the initial users of those bikes stay on the safe areas such as the bike paths around Andover Lake, the multi-use pathway, and the rail trail, and keep them off these streets for starters anyway. So we can address those concerns in creative ways. And in terms of Jeff McGuire's comment, I really like his idea of being innovative and being the first to do something like this. I think it's worth our while. Thank you.
Okay, Joanne Ebert.
Gosh, I hate to follow that because I'm kind of the total opposite opinion. I appreciate the idea and, thinking outside the box and bringing more things to Andover. But I just think that the whole liability thing I couldn't agree with Jeff Murray more. I have a couple bicyclists enthusiasts in my family too. They're constantly working on their bikes too to maintain them and keep them ready for whether it's in the trails or on the roads or whatever. And I'm more worried for the town right now because for such a small town, we have so many projects going. And I just want to see them all run well. And I don't know who would oversee the e-bikes. I just don't find it necessary. Is it going to be one of those things that hopefully it's the community director or whatever, who's going to know who's out? I understand there's only 3 of them. I just think it's unnecessary. I'm really worried about the liability, whether there's a waiver or not, because we all know things that go to lawsuits anyways. And if it was so innovative and exciting in such a New England part of the country that loves hiking and biking and all those kind of things, we would see it in at least one other town, and we don't, and there's a reason. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And last but not least, we have Steve. Okay, Steve, you got 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sold. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending and the public for providing necessary backup for us and let us understand what everybody's thinking. That's it. Item 16 is executive session, but we don't have anything to go into executive session about today, do we, Eric?
Not that I know of. There was one thing I was contemplating, but I didn't get my act together to present it anyway, so
All right. So
doesn't matter.
So now we're on to item 17, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.